All right, guys, welcome. Welcome to another day, another dollar. Here we are at the studio, the blessed permaculture studio, where we can actualize our dreams and realize the truth of what we're all here to do.
Oh yeah.
We testing, 1, 2. You think this is gonna work? Allow accessory to connect. Samsung Technologies allow. I hope it's working. Well, we'll be blessed if it is. How can I? Is there a way? Why did you put the name of that? Plant a seed, watch it grow, and let everyone know this is how we survive in this time. All right, it looks like we are connected now. Cool. All right, so we're recording. Okay, sweet. Hey guys, I wanted to touch base here real quick. Let me get a swig. The covfefe. All right, so what we're here to talk about, inspired greatness. Yesterday, we got the wonderful opportunity to speak on what permaculture is and the concept of ABG, always be gardening. All humans are gardeners. We have the opportunity in every moment to bring our consciousness into this reality, into this world. So everywhere we go, we have the opportunity to interact with the world and to change something about it, whether it's for the good or for the bad or for the neutral. One moment, I'm going to go and pull this up. I can't really use the computer and use the mic at the same time. What I'm pulling up right now is the principles of permaculture. So permaculture is a systematic design system. And I'm going to show you if I can connect, share screen. We'll go right there, share. And now this is how we survive in this time. Plant a seed, watch it grow. You and everyone know. How do we get going with that? And to stage. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. All right. Look at that. So here we go. We got the principles of permaculture. This is from David Holmgren. Depending on who you ask, and there are different principles of permaculture. David Holmgren is one of the founders, you can say, of permaculture alongside Bill Mollison. And they created this concept of permaculture. But it's really, permaculture is truly an open source science. It's a design system. And there are certain principles laid out in the original textbook, what they call the Permaculture Bible. And then this book from David Holmgren, Principles and Pathways Beyond Sustainability, was a wonderful addendum from David Holmgren, who's a real philosophical man who can give deep insights into how these ideas came about and how they can apply to our lives. So here we go. This book is really cool. Here's just real simple. This is how we survive in this time. How do I just get this? I'm not a huge computer guy. So I just want to make this full screen. Johnny, you got to help me out, man. I can't manage all this stuff at the same time. This is too much for me. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to figure out how to make this.
Are you trying to have your cell phone on the side talking about?
That's pretty much what I'm doing. Are you changing things around? Yeah, the problem is. Oh man, so much downtime in this video right now, man. I'm trying to get this. How do I just change this? I just want to change this tab that I'm streaming. You're just gonna have to help me out on this, okay?
Oh, you want to do it.
Let's see if we can. Yeah,
You're showing the wrong tab.
No, it just opened a new tab. So just pop that tab on there.
Here we go.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. This is what I'm looking for right here. So we're just jumping in. So yesterday we covered the concept of ABG, always be gardening. Humans are always gardeners, and the permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, fair share, and that's sort of the starting point of this. So then we start moving into principles. So this is what Gani and I are going to be talking about today. We're going to be sharing some of the principles of permaculture, and like I was saying, there are no rigid rules or principles to permaculture, but these are some principles that were elaborated by David Holmgren to move the ball forward as far as how we can actually function within this framework of what is permaculture. So I'm just gonna run through them and give real. I'm just gonna run through them and give real. I would love Johnny for you to just jump in each one, and I would love Johnny for you to want to share anything. And anytime you want to share, okay, and I'll just hand off the mic.
All right. I'm loud and clear.
So the first step is observe and interact. So now that we've designed, we've formed our ethical basis of what we're going to do. We're going to care for the earth. We're going to care for the people. And we're going to share profits and harvest sustainably in a fair way. That people get taken care of and the earth is taken care of. Another way of saying the third principle is to return the surplus to the first two principles.
And this is like being a good steward, right? And this is the idea that, we're here to tend and keep the garden and take care of it. It's the way that people extract resources. When I say people, I mean corporations masquerading as having rights to people. Yet nobody goes to jail. How are these people, alleged people, legally people, and they never have one person in jail? I think they should at least have like a token person in jail.
I love this idea, dude.
Like, you have that one guy in jail all the time. He's always in jail.
Like the human representative of the corporal entity.
Can you imagine they keep like putting these poor people keep getting put to death in like Coca-Cola or whatever.
Dude, that's crazy. Well, actually, like what you're saying is almost like it's a sacrifice for your sin, right? That's like some Aztec shit, Incan shit. Like, pardon my language. That's like
it is something like that.
It's a sacrifice for your sin, practically.
Yeah, it's the blood. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty wild.
But yeah, it's so weird that they it's this weird accountability game where they don't have accountability when it comes to, as a person, look, if you went and poisoned 1 million people, like, it'd be the end. You'd go to jail, or at least we wouldn't let you poison us anymore.
Yeah.
But if you're one of these big corporations who's doing that, you lobby the government, you
please the shareholders.
It's crazy. Maximize shareholder wealth. Can you imagine if there was just some guy and anytime said, "Hey, why are you harming all these people?" I'm maximizing my worth. I'm maximizing my worth. Bro, what are you talking about? Who are you? You gotta sit down. You gotta sit down.
Calm down, man. Calm down. Yeah. So within this always be gardening framework and the ethical principles that we're in, now the first step is going to be observe and interact. This is going to be one of the principles that we're going to go with it, because there's already so much that's been made on this earth. There's already been so much that's been done. So the first step is going to be, okay, I'm going to take a seat. I'm going to observe what is actually going on here. What can I see? I see a butterfly landing on the flowers. What does that mean? So maybe then I can interact with that butterfly and the flower and see how I affect it. I cut off the flower and now the butterfly doesn't arrive. That's interesting. So every observation and interaction can provide data, which then the human being can use that data, that information, to move forward and learn more and better understand this natural world that we live within. And this being I believe that David Holmgren chose this as the very first principle that he would describe, because this is how permaculture came about, is through the studies of Bill Mollison. And Bill Mollison was an avid traveler and anthropologist, and I believe a university professor as well. And he traveled all around Australia, getting to know the Aboriginal Australias as well as Southeast Asia, getting to know different tribes, and observing how, as well as visiting forests and all these kind of things, and just observing, wow, these rivers take this pattern. These rivers take this winding serpent-like pattern. which is the same pattern that a serpent takes, which is the same pattern when it really analyzed of the way a leopard walks, and eventually the way humans. So these patterns are integral in the formation of the universe. These patterns are, and you learn these through observing and then interacting and disturbing the patterns and seeing how these patterns change. And this is something really, really interesting. I'm gonna come back to this. Here to jump on there, John. I'm gonna pull some up real quick.
You know, and this is what we see. You know, you talk about the data and the feedback, and you know these iterations, and you know, we've been managing cows here, and we're looking at where these cows just were, and you know, talking about how you know the pasture gets better with time with the diversity of grasses when you're just grazing it, as the animals have done for millions of years. You know, it's how they green the desert. You know, we can green the deserts. We've done this in a lot of places, shown this in Jordan and in China and the Southwest here in the States. Greening the desert is something that's we can do by, you know, adding to that organic matter that's in the soil. And, you know, it's amazing that rotational grazing can do this. Just the animals where they want to be. And we talk about this diversity of grasses, you know, so good for the cattle. That's why I like to call this guy Senor Zacate. He's changed his name here.
I love the grass, man. I love the grass, and not the grass that you might be thinking of. So check this out. I always love these sort of images right here. So you can see this is Iowa right here, which I think is a really interesting sort of terrain, geography, geology in Iowa. So here, like if you go zoomed out, right, all you see is this grid, this straight grid. And this is the calculus of agriculture and private ownership. And we make this net over everything so that everything can have a name and a serial number and everything like that. But then if you actually look at different layers of it, different levels, look at these patterns. Look at the pattern of this, pardon all the words, ignore all the words, just look at the land and the geography. Look at the pattern of the river coming through here. And then you go in here and you just see these grids. But look at these roads, the way the roads are put in. And those are on they're going to be on contour on ridge lines. Look, here is a lower area where the water is falling. And why am I getting into this exactly? I find this to be super fascinating. The way that we've chosen to go against a lot of the patterns of nature. If you look at and there are systems in Hawaii, especially in some of the older systems, where the land it's distributed by watershed. So, for example, here would be one watershed. You can see this is a ridge line right here. This is a ridge line right here. So me and my tribe would manage this whole area of watershed, which is a more natural unit of measurement than just putting a random arbitrary square over it and saying, this is my farm, you know, putting some shape that's an arbitrary square, whereas we can say, oh, wow, okay, I get from this ridge to this ridge, the next tribe gets from this ridge to this ridge, and then you get to manage all the water that falls so that if it,
Sally from the valley. She's, this valley, that valley. Makes a lot of sense to manage it that way, doesn't it? Yeah, these grids. And you can't, like place markers that are on the ground, you know, if the lights go out.
Yeah.
That's one thing about technology is that it's not very resilient. You know, these guys are crazy. I don't even understand the gaslighting, but you know, they want to say that they want to put us on a digital currency, and at the same time, they're doing a lot of warnings about cyber attacks and the lights go out. Like, well, how's the digital currency going to work?
Right?
What are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
So, you know, things that sustainable technology that's resilient when the lights go out. You know. Getting back to what's natural, you know, when we talk about permaculture, we're talking about technology, you know, looking at how the grass grows, how the animals and the fruit trees and all the crops, they all go together. You know, it's so cool to be able to grow grass for your animals. How cool is that? You know, if we're taking care of chickens or pigs, which I love as well. But you kind of got to grow range. Well, if you have some sheep, some goats, some cows, these ruminant animals, they can just eat the grass. And I mean, how cool is that? You're just eating grass. It just grows like it's just so much easier to grow than anything else. I would imagine, arguably.
Yeah.
And then along with that, you have the soil's getting better. Like I said, they're getting better. How does that work? How can that be? Well, they're dropping their manure and they're pruning the grass. So when we prune back a plant, it kind of it's catalyst.
It prunes back the roots as well, so then it leaves that carbon in the soil and just builds up that humus layer.
Right, and it tells that plant like, hey man, you just got mowed down, and you need to come back.
Yeah.
And so that grass comes back with a vengeance. Got that manure and everything, and we talk about the grass kind of getting trampled down into the ground, hopeful for that building the soil as well. So it's just something that we can see, we can measure. There are just tens of feet of topsoil in Ukraine and the Great Plains and all these places. How did it get there? It was the bison. It was millions of bison, millions of ruminant animals migrating, going back and forth, and over time building up the soil. And you touched a little bit on some of the top-down suggestions of some tyrants as far as digital currency. But they are doing the same thing with like climate change. They have suggestions of putting people in 15 minutes. The right suggestion, if you're really concerned about carbon emissions, and I think debate whether that's a huge issue, is we should have people managing their animals responsibly. So we should be giving them the tax breaks and getting the heck out of their way. And if we're gonna have a subsidy for anything, which honestly subsidies can't distort the market, but if we're gonna have a subsidy for anything, it needs to be for responsible agriculture. It needs to be for land access. It needs to be for helping keeping local community resilient, having this sovereignty, having this independence, having safe food to eat. We're in a rural area right now where the cattle are grass-fed, grass-finished. There's no grain here. We're in the tropics. It's hard to grow grain in the tropics. We don't have GMO corn that are fattening about the cows at the end of the day. And I was just thinking about this yesterday. Like, you go back to so many places. Grass-fed, grass-finished is so expensive, and for good reason, because it is super nutrient dense. It's nutrient dense. Chemicals aren't in there. When these cows are eating GMO corn with glyphosate, this glyphosate is a super powerful chelator. What does that mean? It means that you can use glyphosate to grab on the rust off of a tank. You can have a rusty tank and it will clean it really well. So the zinc, the iron, the magnesium, these are things in our body that are super important. So that's why the food in the States has 90% less nutrients than it should. It's because it's glyphosate spray. They say just the overspray from a neighbor. You're using 2% of what your neighbor was suggested to use, and they're using double what the bottle says half the time. So 1% what your neighbor uses, just the overspray in the wind, can make it so our crops next door have 90% less nutrients. So, it's getting back to ways of agriculture that just don't require or even have anybody wanting to use these sort of inputs is really powerful. And that's another reason for ruminant agriculture. I think cows are the answer to a lot of our biggest problems. Building soil, a way to grow our food that there's just no reason to use these poisons. And then super nutrient dense food. These are superfoods when we talk about these animal products. Super good for us, high in nutrients, and super tasty. And it's kind of concerning. You look back, going back to the 50s, the way they doctored the science, and it's still doctored, and a lot of advice from doctors, and even the is the American Heart Association. So many of these associations, they sound good, and they're captured. They're captured by industry interest.
What was the thrust behind
behind
Dr.
Dr.
Science back in the 50s? It was for
big
big sugar.
It was for big sugar.
They wanted to, when they went on this whole low fat kick, heart disease went up. When they said saturated fats are bad from the animals, health problems in the States got worse. And so we just got to get back to what's natural. And, one point I like to make is what a pleasure it is, how beautiful it is. These animals grazing grass, fruit trees growing, and, local gardens. They're just beautiful. The diversity of life, the way it all comes together in harmony. Happy animals. I like to tell people, feed the bunnies, water the flowers, save the world. Not always easy, but it is often that beautiful. And you compare that with big agriculture and the monoculture and rows of crops that are covered in poison. It's just night and day, the difference.
Yes. Wow, it's so important to get into all this stuff. This is the problem that we're being counted. This is how permaculture rose up as a design science, as a framework of thinking from people who were observing and seeing that, wow, why are all of these disease rates climbing so much dramatically despite us having more and more access to quantities of food? We live in a so-called industrialized, civilized society where everyone has access to however amount of rice and beans and corn and soy and bacon and whatever that it is they want, yet people are less and less healthy, as well as health, all the medicines, all the so-called advanced medicines available. And yet disease rates are rising and rising and rising. And more people have chronic diseases, not just acute diseases, but chronic diseases that they're managing for years, if not decades of their lives. And so as people are observing with this, they're saying, wow, what if things can be done differently? What if there's something to do with the way we're growing our food that's affecting this? So then you can start to interact and change things. So I want to jump onto this next principle here. We're just going to kind of go through slowly. I don't know if we'll cover every single one today, and we'll just keep riffing and chatting, because this, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is give you guys this idea of permaculture in a way that you can really take it and run with it and move forward with this idea and take action on it. And whatever that looks like for you, each individual is going to have a different set of action steps for this. So I just want to touch on the catch and store energy really quick. So this is going to be one of our permaculture principles. The second one is catch and store energy. So, oh no. That is actually going to be the last one. So I'm gonna jump around the other way, because I think it's more appropriate to go in this direction. So creatively use and respond to change. This is a really good one. So obviously things are changing all the time, and especially in this day and age, we're seeing change coming at a more and more rapid rate as the population of Earth climbs dramatically, and the development of technology is happening faster and faster and faster, especially with things like AI and computation technologies, things like that. So what we need to do as humans, as gardeners, is to creatively use and respond to this change. So maybe that looks like, okay, how can I use AI to move forward this practice, this framework? Or maybe that just looks like, I'm noticing that the rainy season is a little bit longer for me right now, or the snow is coming a little bit later in the year, or the winds during the windy season are coming in a little bit stronger, and maybe there's a higher risk of tornado or things like that. So to creatively use and respond to this change is to observe these things and say, okay, what can I do with this? How can I take advantage of this? Or how do I need to change my practices in order to best adapt to these changes? And if that could be, oh, well, the rainy season's coming a little bit later, then okay, well, I'm going to plant my rice a little bit later, or I'm going to plan my harvest a little bit later, or things along those lines. So we can always creatively adapt to these things. And maybe it's like, oh, there's this new herbicide technology that's coming out that my neighbor's using. So maybe I'm going to plant a windbreak against my neighbor's property, plant a large row of trees to hopefully kind of soak up some of that herbicide so that they can take the brunt of it. And then my crops, my important foods aren't going to be under risk from these sort of experimental technologies.
Right. Yeah. And as mentioned, the wind's kind of picking up here. A lot of the trees you can see them moving in, and how that can affect everything. Wind coming from one direction then the other, and you talk about a windbreak for overspray of chemicals. It's always a good idea. I like that idea of planting things around the outside property to kind of give privacy and
catch some of that poison. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
bring up there, but
responding to change. It's,
and we talked about last time the rain coming down. Where's the it can really change the topography with time as you lose maybe some topsoil from one place away, the water can flow. Maybe the different ways that the water is coming onto your land. And it's the way that the trees are. We've noticed a lot that, some of the blight, the mangoes this year, a lot of them are having a problem with their fruit, so it's staying adaptive. When you're a big guy, you get a lot of advantages, and we see how they do that. When you're the small guy, you can be nimble, and so this is something as people, we can stay adaptable with the different things that we're going through and we're using. And I love the next one here. Use the edges and value the marginal.
Yeah.
We're talking about the edges with the neighbors and whatnot, and we were cutting grass the other day for your cows, bringing it to them. We're talking about leaving a tenth of it around the edges, right? And what can that mean? Well, it was still kind of providing the privacy that it was providing. It was still leaving some of the ecology there that some of the insects were using, so that if there was some healthy balance in that grass, there's still a remnant there. And as the grass regrows, those insects can come back that way. So instead of just clear cutting everything, and the aesthetic of it, honestly, it just looks a lot better, I think, when you leave 10% of whatever you might be taking out, leave it there. I see this with this bugs me. It's incredible the way you'll see when development goes in. Maybe there was like some nice nature on a couple acres, and they'll just clear cut all of it, and then put in some tiny little trees. I was like, what did you do?
It's like that Bradford pear. Do you guys have that in Florida? In Virginia, it's like this huge weedy tree that all the landscapers put in, but it's terrible. It has no function.
This is it's just these little landscaping trees. Like, why there were so much beautiful trees there? I think it would be really responsible. I'm sure some localities are doing it, but there should be developers that are going in there. And this, I think, is a great place that permaculture should really try to take over and thrive in is land development.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting in there is like, what's the 10 to 20% of the trees here that are just beautiful, that are just like worth saving, and then design around those, right? Because you need to have green space anyways in most places, because you need to have a place where you're doing water catchment.
Yeah.
So you can incorporate this, prevent flooding this way. Leave some of these nice big trees. Make it like a little bit of it like a nice little park. Leave the green space. Leave some trees for the parking lot. I grew up in Florida. Grew up going to a grocery store with these big trees you could park under. Now, whenever they put a new development, there's nothing like that. They take them all out. I get it. These trees kind of can, like, the roots can kind of mess with the pavement a little bit, but it's like, how much worth it is like just the beauty of it, or you go there. The shade, as a customer, I don't care if a bird leaves a mess on my car once in a while. Like, I want to park and come outside and my car's 40 degrees cooler.
Yeah.
That's big. That's huge. So, make it beautiful. Make it beautiful. It's you go to some beautiful places, and it is like, beauty's been described as like a call to higher being. It's inspiring, and to just pave everything and make it brutal. And we do the same thing with our architecture. It's just we deserve better than that. Kids deserve better than that, and that's something that we can be part of the solution for. Talking about these design principles. So.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I do love that principle. Use edges and value the marginal. That's definitely a good one. Let's jump into the next one. Use and value diversity. It's definitely similar. Similar but different. Use edges and value the marginal. Like you said, focus on those sides. One thing, I just visited a friend's property the other day, and he's starting, and this is something John has touched on before also, is he's actually starting the majority of his work from the border, from the fence line. He's been planting all of his trees just from the fence line in. So the whole inside of the property is still pretty much untouched, but all along the border, and this is a 15-acre property, all along the border, he's just been planting fruit trees little by little inside, planting cactuses, planting like edible spinach trees. It's really really an interesting idea to use the edges and value the marginal. So now we're going to talk about use and value diversity, and this is, I think, something really important, something that's touched on a lot in cultural permaculture, about how we can use different ideas. And there's a lot of people that aren't consulted with different things. Like, for example, cutting down trees in a parking lot. It's like, how if we're designing a parking lot, how can we find like some 3.5-year-old toddler kid and be like, hey, why don't you give me your opinion of like the best parking lot you can imagine? Nobody would ever do that. Nobody. It's like, that's diversity. That's like, and of course there's going to say some crazy things that are like, no, we're not going to do that. But I bet they're going to drop some gems, and it's going to be like, oh shoot, we should try that. And that applies to genetic diversity as well. Sometimes you think, oh, well, I just really only want mulberries growing in my property, so I'm going to cut down all the trees that aren't mulberries. And maybe because I planted 10 mulberries and they're just thriving, I'm getting so many mulberries. So I said, oh, I only want mulberries. So I chopped down everything, and now all my mulberries aren't giving me any fruit. So it's like, oh, what happened? Well, maybe there was some other tree that was hosting some insect that was protecting those mulberries. You know, there's always something that is undocumented. And this is where it comes back to the observe and interact. And then there's another one that's going to come up. I think the next one is small and slow solutions. So when we observe and interact, and we use small and slow solutions, we can really see how the diversity is actually affecting the reality of the garden that we're working with. And again, the garden is not just the biology of the land, but also the biology of the human mind, the psychology. And when we slowly, it's kind of like being a father or a parent, you know, you get to slowly introduce new ideas, concept, new seeds, new plants, new animals into a system, and value the diversity and see, wow, okay, this is the change that makes. How am I going to use that to catch and store energy to obtain yield? How am I going to use that to help my neighbor, to help my family, to help my economy, to benefit the soil, to benefit the climate, all of these things. And this is where diversity is often unstudied and often unaccounted for, because it's difficult. It's difficult to do accounting for extreme diversity. It just can't be done effectively and economically. But when we go slow and we take time to observe, we can start to develop a deeper understanding that some would argue maybe it's a spiritual or tribal understanding that you really can only gain through generations of interaction. What do you think about that, Johnny?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it all comes together, and you know, it kind of pairs along the jumping ahead here, integrate rather than segregate, right? Like having this symbiosis that can happen, right? That we want to work towards. You know, there's this idea, you know, kind of the scientific idea that you kind of keep on pairing everything and thinking of everything very, you know, analytic way, but you know, it often ignores the fact that everything kind of works together in harmony. And yeah, to your point, you know, you take away. You cut all the other trees. You know, you're gonna cause some issues there. There's gonna be some drawbacks that maybe you're not aware about. So, you know, the other one here, we talk about use small and slow solutions, right? So, you know, we talk about regenerative agriculture, building soil, right? How important is it to build our soil? And to do this the right way, you know, we're gonna get this nutrient density that we talk about. We're gonna restore that, make it bioavailable. You know, conversely, you know, what's the way of this big poison system? It's this nitrogen fertilizer, you know, which we were talking about is like a process that just came around after World War II, after they were doing chemistry to create weapons. And it's not so great. So they're literally sequestering the nitrogen
with petrochemicals, and then nitrogen is very volatile, so it's they're using salts to do this, and these salts are not good for the soil. So when we're adding these NPK fertilizers, which help make the plants super green in the meantime, they're sequestering that nitrogen with salt, which builds up over time, hard on the soil. Conversely, we use manure, we use compost. Maybe we make some biochar. We have the animals getting that fertility in the ground naturally. This is there's just a principle that I see at play so much, is that the more natural, the better. And so we got to get back to that more.
Amen. Amen. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I love this idea of integrate rather than segregate. I do think a lot about science, and I'm not a science denier. By no means am I a science denier. I hate that word even. I see that science is inherently it isolates variables. That's the way that you can come to these conclusions that seem very clear, is by isolating variables. But the fact of the world and the fact of humanity and the fact of life is that in nature, variables are not isolated. There's so much complication and diversity and beauty that's constantly going on that we can never account for all of these things. And I know AI, this is what people are hailing in the coming of AI for, so that we can really begin to integrate all of these different isolated variables, right? I genuinely believe personally that it can never actually be done completely, and it never will be done completely, and that the way we need to do it is we just need to live with a certain amount of faith. And pardon me for maybe bringing the conversation in this direction, but I think it is really important that living with a certain amount of faith is really important, and then we can integrate things with the trust and faith that there are possibilities of things that will emerge. This is a wonderful concept. I love the concept of emergence, is that when we combine two or more things, there will be results that are uncalculated, and there are things that will arise that are greater than the sum of the two parts. It's like 2 + 2 is equal to 5, which doesn't make any sense, but that's kind of what emergence is, that we bring two things together and something could come out that's greater than what we could ever imagine. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So let's jump down here to jump in on that. Yeah, brother.
I love it. You're talking about having faith and integrating rather than segregating. And what comes to mind for me is these big chemical companies. One thing they're also guilty of is these GMOs. And GMOs really turn our whole planet, our kids into guinea pigs. One big experiment. GMOs, they're not testing them in labs. They're testing them on us. And they're not even doing real safety testing, guys. Yeah, there's this word they come up with. It's like a equivocally similar. It looks like a corn, it tastes like a corn, just as safe as a corn, which is insane. It's absolutely insane. And so, to have faith that we have everything, when you just look around the planet, you look at how beautiful it can be. We don't need mad scientists in the lab working for serial criminal profiteers, making new viruses, making new plants, making new, this technology is real dangerous. And they're playing God. The bad guys playing God. Not good. Not good. And you say integrate rather than segregate. This makes me think of the microbiome, right? We've got all this diversity of microbes that's really good for us in our body, in our digestion. The microbes on and in our body actually outnumber us. They say like 30 to 1 because they're a lot smaller than our cells. But still they add up to about 10% of our body weight. And they're really helpful for us. They help us with immunity. They help us break down our food with digestion. They help actually create some vitamins that we can't create otherwise. And so, integrate, look at this as a whole community. is important. And when we don't do that, you know, we talk about chemicals that we're eating, like glyphosate, it's registered as an antibiotic. A lot of people don't know that. You know, we try to avoid eating, you know, antibiotics like amoxicillin, doxycycline, you know, unless we have to. Because it is hard on our microbiome. It can create digestive issues. So, you know, I think that this is something that we can consider when we're thinking about our soil, you know, avoiding these kind of chemicals that are going to cause these issues when it comes into creating these patterns of how these systems go together. You know, there's this great symbiosis between the plants and the animals of, you know, the manure, the plants give food to eat. This is a great cycle that can get better with time. And so to integrate that in our designs so that we can, you can just grow naturally. You know, this is something that's beautiful, not requiring chemical inputs. So,
Yes.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Zacate?
I think that's awesome. Let me see if I can pull up this video really quick. I'm not sure if it's gonna work.
Oh, by the way, you didn't even see this. I got your name down here as Adam Zacate.
Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. I hope this audio is gonna play through. I want to do this video really quick. Because we're exactly halfway through the principles, and we got to get going here in a few minutes. So I want to jump in and just show this. We're not gonna watch the whole video, but we'll just touch on it really quickly and talk to it here for a second. How do I?
Here's mute yours.
Uh-huh.
Your computer, not the audio.
Oh.
All right. Play it now. No, you got it there.
200 acres of corn for a total yield of 235,200.
Right, so the reason I want to show this video really quickly, we're just gonna jump through it, is just cut your audio for a second. Thanks. Basically, this guy's outlining the economics of being a huge scale farmer. This guy's talking hundreds of thousands of acres that he's planting in a year, just corn and soy. 100,000 acres of corn, 50,000 acres of soy, more or less, something like that. And he's talking the economics of it. So we're talking a plus $1 million swing every year. They're spending and losing, and you'll see who's really winning at this. Because who's taking all this money at this is the seed companies, the chemical companies, and the banks. Oh, and then the tractor companies too have a pretty big win, but the tractor companies are in bed with the chemical companies because all these tractors have their attachments for auto spraying and all these measurements. And it's important work because to an extent we need these calories produced. We need a certain amount of calories produced, but I think this is probably not the best solution. So let's jump in and we'll watch it for a second, and then I'm gonna let Johnny jump in when he's got something to say.
You gotta mute it again.
1,500 bushels. Well, now we have to sell it. So when it comes to selling it, we go based off the Chicago Board of Trade. That's the market that shows the current price of corn and soybean. There's a thing called basis. So let's say the Chicago Board of Trade says corn is $4 a bushel, but there's a lot of local buyers around that don't really need a lot of corn right now. So they're only offering $801,000. And the low was $8,060,000. Oh, but wait, remember those government payments I was talking about earlier? This is where they come into play. So in 2018, the United States government came out with the Market Facilitation Program, aka MFP payments. So on our farm, the MFP program paid us $2,000 for corn and $47,000 for soybeans. So when we add our MFP payment to the rest of our sales, that brings us to a total income of $1,109,000. To store grain at our local co-op, it costs 15 cents a bushel for the first 90 days, no matter what. The very first expense that I want to talk about is equipment. Take something like this tractor, for example. If someone were to buy this particular one brand new, it would run over $300,000. The sprayer behind me, Try finding one of those for under $200,000 used. One of these in a 10-year-old machine, probably looking at $100,000. So right there, just these 3 pieces of equipment, $100,000, $335,000 in just corn seed. And for the 500 acres of soybeans we had, that cost us $24,000. So as a whole, it cost us $159,000 just for the seed to plant. Now that we've bought some really expensive seed, we want to make sure that we can get the most yield out of that seed as possible. That's where the machine behind me comes in. This is the sprayer. On weed killer for corn, we spent $48,000 last year. And on weed killer for beans, we spent $28,000. So there's 2 types of ground we plant on. Corn that was corn the year before, aka corn on corn, and then corn that was beans the year before, aka corn on beans. Since corn robs more nitrogen from the soil than beans, we need to supplement more nitrogen back into corn on corn soil than corn on bean soil. So corn on corn soil takes more nitrogen. So for us to put our corn on corn 32%, it costs us $68,000. And for us to put our corn on bean nitrogen expenses on our farms is cash rent. According to Iowa State University's extension, there are farmers who own 100% of their acres. There's farmers who rent 100% of their acres, and there's farmers who rent some and own some. So in the case of us, we own 1,100 acres and we rent 600 acres. So what we do on Cornstar Farms is we try to keep our land payments equivalent to what our cash rent average is. So
I just wanted to touch on that.
He loves it. No, it is. It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just a fascinating thing to see a little bit the economics of this game that like huge swaths of the United States are playing, like, and maybe not just the United States but the whole world.
Let me see this here. So, what comes to mind for me is, people have been pushed to get bigger and bigger, get out in farming. We've lost so many small farms. I think we're losing 77 small farms a day. And these kind of economics that they're pushing is, less margins, but also less labor. So you see, it's like you got to get bigger. This is you see $100 and something thousand just for the seed. The seed should be free because it should be seed from last year. But this is again patented seed from the likes of Monsanto. What's concerning is this is they made this promise. We're gonna use less chemicals with this GMO products because these GMOs they're gonna be herbicide resistant, which is real scary, guys, because you just imagine this corn that we're eating, now they can spray this chemical all over the corn and the corn will die. So they're spraying it everywhere to kill all the weeds, kills everything green, but safe for our kids to eat. Can you imagine? Can you imagine this line of nonsense? All right, kills everything green, kills all the microbes, kills the fungus, kills 93% of endangered species, but safe for our kids to eat. That's what they're telling us, guys.
Yeah.
And that's what the EPA, we've captured the EPA so thoroughly that the EPA states there's a real incestuous relationship there as well. So, get big or get out is basically, these big international conglomerates have been able to lobby, use their legislation. And, if there's hope that we got a democratic process, I just want to say, people having success at the smaller levels in their governments. I'm a real big fan of there's non-toxic neighborhoods doing some great work to help over 200 communities quit using chemicals in the parks and schools where the kids are playing. And my brother, my buddy here, he loves the grids. It is crazy how
you just go everywhere in the world, man. Look at these places.
He's just zooming in on random places. And
every single one of these places, man, is just people spraying tons and tons of glyphosate, paraquat, all of this stuff.
What I wanted to say is great. I didn't realize it was getting so bad yet. Is that some of these GMO crops, they're designed to withstand 5 different herbicides. So now you can, because the weeds are getting resistant, right? Genes are very transmissible. We see that in about the only study they did in GMOs for people eating them. We saw that the GMO gene into the microbes that are in our gut right away. And so we see the same thing, whether it's somehow the genes from the GMO corn getting into the super weeds, or if it's just a natural selection adaptation that's happening. We're seeing super weeds that are very adapted to these herbicides that are drowning our crops. And so now what they're doing is they want to be able to use different kinds. So now there's GMO plants that's not just glyphosate. You can put poison on, but also AMBA, 2,4-D, and really, come at it from different angles, right? If you have a issue, use a couple different poisons, you're much more likely to get them all. So this is what's going on. Our audience, not entirely in the States, but if you look at the States, we're about the sixth country on the planet, at least in industrialized society by far. And poisons we're using more than 10x the glyphosate of the average country in Europe. And yeah, we got to do a whole lot better. So, what do you say there, Zacate?
Man, it's a beautiful thing, right? It's a beautiful thing as human beings that we are such gardeners. We are such effective gardeners. It is just an absolutely wonderful power that we have. How much power and reach have we achieved that this whole world is our garden? Now, my question to you is, do you want this to be your garden? You notice when you scroll on Google Maps, Google Earth, most of it looks completely dead. They're just grids of nothing. Why is that? It's because the majority, well, maybe we'll leave that as a question that you can sit with. Why is that? I won't give you the answer now. I'll let you meditate on it until tomorrow. Why is there nothing growing here? Yet we've grown the largest garden in the world that occupies the entire world.
Let me see this microphone.
The entire world.
I for the viewers back at home, I know you're wondering, you gotta be wondering like me, like, why does this guy keep zooming in on all these different places on the map? He's showing just how pervasive this is and how it all looks similar all over. This is also just something that, Adam, you told me once, you're like, oh, you ever just zoom in and just look at the ground? I'm like, no, never have. He's like, it's really interesting.
So I love it because I'm an observer. I like to go everywhere and just watch what people are doing, and I like to involve myself in what people are doing. And so every single one of these plots that I'm zooming in on is a human being. They're actions of a human being or a group of human beings who have come together and made a collective decision that they're going to manage the land in this fashion. And the whole world is in this fashion. So that means the whole world, collectively humanity, we have all decided that this is how we're going to manage our land. That we're going to mow it clean. We're going to put a tractor on it. We're going to spray it with herbicides. We're going to plant an annual crop. We're going to spray a bunch of fertilizer in because the soil is completely dead. And then we're going to try to get enough food to feed ourselves with. And we're going to keep getting sicker and sicker and sicker in that process. Meanwhile, there's other societies. There's fringe societies. There's marginal societies that have existed since the beginning of time and continue to exist right now that operate in a more sustainable way, in a more holistic way, and they don't suffer from these chronic diseases. And they don't work 8 to 12 hours a day, 6 to 7, 5 to 7 days a week, and they to enjoy their lives, get to run through the forest, they get to run through the plains, ride their horses through the plains, chase bison or zebras or things like that. And yes, of course, there are struggles with that. They face dwindling land access due to our pervasive nature of continuously growing this garden of Cain, you can say, right? Because Abel was the herder, and Cain was the gardener in this manner, the one planting these annual crops. And Cain was at the end of the day the one who killed his brother because he wanted because of jealousy, practically. So we can keep looking, and we can see that Cain has taken over the world, the descendants of Cain, the followers of Cain, and we have the opportunity to say, maybe we can do things differently.
Yeah, Let's get back to being able.
Yeah, let's get back to being able. Being good shepherds. Happy chickens, happy plants.
Are you able?
All right. Until next time, mahalo, everyone.
All right. Until next time, mahalo, everyone.